Virginia. Mike's shop. Mike's shop had multiple OEM certifications, including Audi, VW, Porsche, Nissan, GTR, and many others. In addition, his staff was a Toyota and BMW factory trained as at the time the collision repair facility could not be certified unless owned by a dealership. Mike is accredited Master Automotive Manager and AMAM through the Automotive Management Institution, or AMI. He also participates in the development of the collision ASE testing for technicians, estimators in the USA. Mike is also fully certified in all collision categories for ASE. Mike has presented to groups across North America, as well as Canada, Mexico, Australia. Mike travels on average over 300 days per year with all the stakeholders in the collision and repair industry. Collision Advice facilitates 20 groups called the Spartan 300 for OEM certified shops. In addition, Collision Advice has been selected by several OEMs to provide their factory training in regards to estimating, scanning, calibrations, to include Porsche, Toyota, Lexus, Nissan, Infiniti, Honda, and Acura. Participants in Mike Anderson seminars constantly rate them as exceeding their expectations and highly recommend his seminars to others. Mike also produces a quarterly summary of the latest trends and statistics in the US for the collision industry, as well as conducts quarterly surveys of over 28,000 collision repair professionals in regards to insured reimbursement. These surveys are called Who Pays for What? Speaking with passion as well as firsthand experience, Mike will not only teach you cutting edge management techniques, but is guaranteed to leave you laughing as well. So, with that, Mike, again, I appreciate you being here, and it's all yours.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you so much. I'm actually kind of broadcasting or conducting this webinar for you from the Lucid Conference. I'm at the Lucid Conference in Scottsdale, Arizona, where it was a wonderful 110 degrees Fahrenheit today. So really happy to be in my room and sharing some insights with you. So thank you all so very much. So the title of tonight's presentation is Bulletproof Negotiations. I did put into the chat panel my assistant, my teammates' contact information, Tiffany Driggers. If you'd like a copy of this presentation, you can just email her or text her directly, and she'll send this presentation to you, as well as some other resources I'll be sharing with you tonight. So as Micah said, we at Collision Advice, we do all the factory estimate training for Toyota, Lexus for certification, Nissan, Infiniti, Honda, Acura, Porsche. We've also built training for Subaru, BMW, Stellantis, formerly known as Fiat Chrysler, Volvo, and several other vehicle manufacturers. So currently, today at Collision Advice, we actually do training for 11 different vehicle manufacturers. So with that said, let me go ahead and jump right into this presentation. I thought I'd start by sharing some data with you that was specific to your state. So this right here, what I'm sharing with you right now, is the average severity for all insurance claims, both DRP and non-DRP. This is all insurance claims, both DRP and non-DRP, showing you over the past 4 years. So if we were to look at the state of Washington, for example, you'll see that in 2022, the average severity was $5,009. That increased to $5,279 in 2023. If we were to look, for example, at the state of Oregon, you'll see that the average severity for all insurance claims, both DRP and non-DRP, was $46.87 in 2022, and that increased to $49.15 in 2023. So you will see the statistics for every single state. Now, what's interesting is if we go and we look at the average labor hours by state, if you look at the state of Washington, you'll see that the average body labor hours per state, average body labor hours for the state of Washington actually went backwards by 0.2. The average body labor hours in the state of Washington were 19.9 in 2022. That actually declined and went backwards to 19.7 hours in 2023. If you look at Oregon, Oregon actually declined and went from 20.4 labor hours down to 20.1, while most other states have increased. Let's look at average paint labor hours. In the state of Washington, the average paint labor hours per estimate stayed flat at 9.7. The state of Oregon actually declined by 1/10. So the industry average is 10.3 paint labor hours per estimate. And I can also tell you the industry average for paint materials is $471 per repair order. We look at the average frame labor hours for the state of Washington. They actually declined by 1/10. State of Oregon stayed flat. And then we look at mechanical labor hours for the state of Washington, increased from 1.3 to 1.4. So while severity went up approximately $250 from 2022 to 2023 in the state of Washington, the fact is the average labor hours actually declined by about 0.6. The severity went up, but your average labor hours per estimate actually went negative. They declined. Now, why did severity go up but labor hours declined? Well, number one is you have to remember most shops raised their labor rate in the last year to 18 months. So most shops raised their labor rate and that increased the average severity. In addition, the average severity increased by anywhere from $300 to $500 per repair order because of calibrations, right? So ADAS gave us a bump in severity last year. And then the average estimate in 2023 had approximately anywhere from 5 to 7 more parts per repair order or per estimate. And the average price increase on a part went up between 13 to 18%. So all of those things culminated in the average severity increasing, while the average labor hours actually stayed the same, or in your case for Washington State, actually declined by about 0.7. Now let's talk a little bit about what's going on around the United States. Claims count was down approximately 9% in the month of March. So March of 2024 had about 9% less claims or accidents than in March of 2023. To put that in perspective, if you repaired 100 cars a month, that would be about, 9 less cars. I will tell you, looking at the data preliminarily for the month of April, claims count looks like in April, it was down about 12 to 15%. Now, again, these are national averages. The average shop in the United States has gone from having a 3-week to a month backlog to down to like 1 week or even 2 days. So we've seen most shops, they've chewed up their backlog of work and they don't have the backlog they did. So I will tell you, it's very important that as a collision repair professional, that you get back to the basics and follow up on your unscheduled estimates, follow up on estimates written, not scheduled, as well as any assignments you receive and getting on those in a prompt manner. So capture rate, closing ratio, batting average, all those terms we've used for the last 25 years are still relevant today, and we got to get back to selling. Now, why have claims dropped off dramatically in the United States? Well, number one is we had the warmest winter and the mildest winter in like the last 40 years in the United States of America. In addition, most consumers saw anywhere from a 12 to 20% insurance premium increase. So because of that, a lot of consumers are reluctant to file a claim today because of the fact that there's some, their premiums went up and they're afraid if they file a claim, their premiums will go up even more. In addition, ADAS is now having an effect, just like we always thought that it would, and that there are less accidents as a percentage of vehicles that are on the road today. And also the COVID backlog has kind of gone away, right? The supply chain has improved. And while the economy is very, very good, the narrative, and this is the key word, the narrative, the economy, I'll tell you right now, the economy is tremendous. But the narrative that all of the political parties, both Republican and Democrat, and the narrative that social media and the news media put out is that the economy is unstable because of the upcoming election. And so because of this narrative, right, what they tell everybody, people are less apt to file a claim or spend money. So all of these things have culminated in the industry going from a 1-month backlog down to a couple of days or a week. Now, with that said, I will tell you that the insurance companies, the pendulum has swung back into their favor because shops aren't as busy, so they're playing hardball. I can give you an example that State Farm, for every dollar they collected in premiums last year, they paid out about $1.13. That was their combined loss ratio for what they paid to fix the car, plus rental car cost, overhead, etc. Geico, for every dollar they collected in premiums, was paying out a combined loss ratio of around 98 cents on the dollar. So insurance companies obviously were paying out an all-time high last year in regards to severity. So now what they're doing is they're trying to hold the line and they're pushing back on things that they normally would pay for. And we're seeing that all around the country. I'm sure if we were in person and I asked all of you to raise your hands, and are you getting more pushback from insurance companies in regards to non-included operations or in regards to things they don't want to pay for versus they will, and more aftermarket or used parts compared to OEM parts, I believe most of you would raise my hands. So because of that, we have to kind of sharpen our saw a little bit and get back to the basics of understanding how to negotiate. So first of all, what is a negotiation? Well, first of all, when you look at the dictionary, or you go online and you look up what does the word negotiation mean, it says it's a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. Now you'll notice it says a discussion, not an argument, right? Not a battle. It says a discussion aimed at reaching an agreement. So you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, negotiations is not a fight, but it's also not taking and throwing up a white flag and surrendering and giving it in, right? Negotiations, again, is not a fight. It's not surrendering. It's not a truce. It's a discussion aimed at coming to an agreement. And that's what we have to remember negotiations are. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that I have learned in my career as both a former multi-shop owner and as a current industry consultant who travels on the road over 300 days a year, working with a variety and hundreds, if not thousands, of collision repair professionals. One of the things I've learned is negotiations actually all begins when you first interact with the consumer. You've got to take and get the consumer to be educated. An educated consumer is your best advocate when it comes to negotiating with a third-party payer for reimbursement on a claim. It's critical. So what is the role of the vehicle owner or the consumer in negotiations? Well, Ryan Taylor from Body Shop Booster really put it best. He said people are more afraid of making a wrong decision than they are of spending money. Let's say this again, right? People are more afraid of making a wrong decision. Stop. Then continue on than they are of spending money. If you think about Amazon, right? I'm sure most of us have bought things on Amazon, and we don't search by cheapest price. We search by average customer review because we are concerned with making a bad decision on something sight unseen. It's the same thing with car repairs. Most consumers are more concerned with making a wrong decision than they are about, what it's going to cost me to get my car fixed. So one of the first things we need to do to be successful in negotiations is we've got to establish our competence with the vehicle owner. One of the things I like to say is that competence leads to confidence. If we can illustrate our competence, our knowledge, our wisdom of how to properly repair a vehicle to a consumer, then they're going to have more confidence in us. And I will tell you, I came into the industry as an adult in November of 1985, and I have never seen more shops charging the customer out of pocket today than what I see today. More and more shops, someone who's never charged the customer out of pocket in the past are now having to do that today. Some are using the word copay. Mrs. Jones, you're responsible for your $500 deductible and a $733 copay. But before you can tell a customer they may have to pay out of pocket, or before you can get a consumer or customer vehicle owner to ally with you in regards to negotiations with a third-party payer, they've got to believe that you're competent and that you know what you're speaking about. So how do we get the vehicle owner on our side from the very beginning? How do we get this consumer to want to step up with us if we have to go against the insurance company and say, I need to pay more money, I need to be paid for an in-process scan, or I need to be paid for OEM parts? How do we get the vehicle owner on our side? Well, I can tell you right now, one of the best ways of doing this, from my experience, is utilizing the vehicle's owner's manual. Yes, you heard that correctly. Utilizing the vehicle owner's manual. Now, most vehicles are going to have the owner's manual in the glove box. It's important that we always ask the customer for their permission before we go in their glove box in order to, get the owner's manual out to review with them. I don't know about you, but I found some crazy things in glove boxes over my career: guns, money, drugs, condoms, alcohol, you name it. I'm sure all of you have as well. So we want to make sure we always ask the vehicle owner for permission before we go to their glove box to get their owner's manual. We also know that every vehicle manufacturer's glove boxes, their owner's manuals are available digitally as well that you can download, from online. So it's about getting the owner's manual and educating the vehicle owner that you are the expert on their vehicle and establishing your competence, because competence leads to confidence, that you can educate them that you know a lot about their vehicle. Another way you can get the customer on your side is calling the customer every single day that the vehicle is on hold. So what I might do is I might call Mrs. Jones and say, Mrs. Jones, this is Mike from ABC Collision. I want to let you know we've disassembled your vehicle. We found some additional items and we've notified your insurance company. However, currently your vehicle status is on hold until we get approval from your insurance carrier. Therefore, you may want to call them and expedite the claim. Then I'm going to call Mrs. Jones 2 days later. Mrs. Jones, remember I called you the other day and I told you we found some additional items? Well, we're still waiting for authorization from your insurance carrier. Therefore, your vehicle status is on hold and you may want to call them to expedite the claim. We have found, historically speaking, that when we call a vehicle owner 2 or 3 times to let them know their vehicle status is on hold, we're waiting for the insurance company, one of 3 things happens. They either A, call the insurance company and get them out faster, B, get us to approve over the phone, or C, the customer says, just fix my car and I'll pay the bill. Any of those are better options than waiting for a week. Now let's talk about the owner's manual. Let's say, for example, that you came in with your 2019 Toyota Camry, and I would ask you permission to get your owner's manual out of your glove box. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to the seatbelt section of the owner's manual. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the seatbelt section and I'm going to say, Mrs. Jones, I want to show you right here that it says do not use a damaged seatbelt until it is replaced. Damaged seatbelts cannot protect an occupant from death or serious injury. Mrs. Jones, I want to let you know that we have access to the Toyota procedures that tell us how to inspect the seatbelts. It also requires the use of a diagnostic computer, and we actually have a Toyota diagnostic computer. So we know how to inspect your seatbelts. You may want to contact ABC Insurance to tell them you want your seatbelt inspected. You see, I'm using the owner's manual to illustrate my confidence that I'm knowledgeable about their vehicle, but also to educate them and get them to start making the request with the consumer. So if the consumer comes back and the insurance company comes back and says, I'm not paying to inspect the seatbelts, I've already educated the consumer that if it's damaged and we don't inspect it, that it can cause a death or serious injury. So now they're going to be on my side. Let's look here at a Volkswagen. This is a 2019 Volkswagen Golf. Safety belts that were subject to stress in an accident and stretch must be replaced with a correct new safety belt. Replacement after a crash may be necessary, even if the safety belt shows no visible damage, right? So I'm going to educate the vehicle owner. I'm just using this as an example about seatbelt inspections, and therefore I'm establishing my competence and my knowledge base on their specific vehicle, so they trust me, and they're also going to be willing to support me with any discussions with a insurance appraiser or third-party payer. Now, again, if you're not a DRP and you've contacted the insurance company that needs a reinspection, again, you want that consumer to be your ally, so you'll call that consumer every single day. Mrs. Jones, we've disassembled your vehicle and we found some additional items. We notified your insurance carrier and currently we're waiting on approval authorization. Therefore, the vehicle status is on hold. You may want to call your insurance company to expedite the claim. If we do this several days in a row, we're going to, again, get the consumer on our side. They're going to know we're not the cause of the delay, and they're going to help us to, again, to be an ally in our conversations with the insurance carrier. Now, I want you to look at my screen, and you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see a triangle. And at the top, it's very small, and this represents like 0 to 10 minutes. Most people will go out with the vehicle owner when they show up to drop their car off, and we'll get the VIN number, production date, and et cetera. And then what happens is we have more communication throughout the process with the vehicle owner. What I'm encouraging you to do is to flip the triangle upside down and spend more time with the vehicle owner when they drop off their vehicle. In our shops, we always did what was called a DRA appointment, damage review appointment. And that is where we reviewed with the customer and we set appropriate expectations. So ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, I think we have to flip the triangle upside down and spend more time with the consumer so we can prove our competence, which leads to their confidence and then being an ally in discussions with the insurance carrier. Now, let's talk a little bit about the rules of negotiation. These are the Mike Anderson Collision Advice rules of negotiation. Rule number 1, your opinion doesn't mean jack. The only thing that matters is what you can prove, substantiate, or justify. So rule number 1, your opinion doesn't mean jack. The only thing that matters is what you can prove, substantiate, or justify. Rule number 2, don't take the bait. If you were here with me in person, I'd make you say it out loud with me. Don't take the bait. You see, insurance companies, they are trained and they are taught and they are coached to say to you, you're the only one. No one else charges for that. That's not prevailing or competitive in our area. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a negotiation tactic. It's also a distraction tactic, right? You know, when they say to you, you're the only one that charges that, that's not competitive, etc., they're baiting you. They're attempting to distract you from what you were asking for. And if you take that bait, then what happens is they just kind of got you off you were asking for. And now you're defending yourself about how your shop's different than the other shops. So when they say to you, no one else charges for that, that's not competitive, you're the only one, don't take the bait. Instead, I want you to shift the conversation to them about talking about the facts. Now, first of all, I will tell you that negotiations and the discussion around negotiations absolutely is tied in to emotional decisions and any emotions in the conversation, 100%. And we're going to save that conversation for another day because you absolutely have to acknowledge the emotions. But when you're talking to the insurance appraiser, we also want to stick to the facts. And the facts are as follows. Question number 1, is what you're asking for required to restore the vehicle back to pre-accident condition? Is it required? Once the insurance appraiser agrees that it's required, then question number 2, is what you're asking for included in any other labor operation? Number 3, if it's not included, is there a predetermined time in the database, meaning Auditex, CCC, or Mitchell? And number 4, if it's not, then what is it worth? So let's talk about this. Is it required to R&I the airbag when I weld on a Toyota? Yes, it is. Here's a document from Toyota that says it's required. Is removing the airbag included when I replace the quarter panel? No, it's not. Here's where the estimating system says it's not. Is there a time in the database? Yes, it pays 1.4, and that's with the headliner removed. Another example could be, is it required to prep a raw Nissan bumper cover before I paint it? Yes, it is. Here's a document from Nissan. Is prepping the raw bumper cover included with the paint labor or anything else? No, it's not. Here's where Auditex CCC Mitchell says it's not. Is there a predetermined time in the database? Yes. CCC is 25% of the base code time with a maximum of an hour. Or let's say, is it required to disconnect the battery before I weld on a vehicle? Yes, it is. Here's the documentation. Is it included? No, it's not. Here's the documentation. There's not a time to disconnect the battery. So now we're just having a discussion about what that's worth. Now, you know, again, if we were in person, I would ask you, how do you like these questions? Let me tell you where I learned these questions from. I had the opportunity to sit in on some State Farm corporate training one time, and this came right out of State Farm's training manual. Now, I'm not saying they practice this at the local level with field adjusters, right, or desk review staff, but that's where these questions came from. And so I embraced these questions, and I started to apply a logic to them. Now, I know what they say. You cannot win an emotional argument or discussion with logic. I agree with that. But again, we're going to come back to that conversation in a little bit. Now, how can I prove the 4 negotiation questions? Is it required? Is it included? Is there a predetermined time? What is it worth? First of all, OEM repair procedures is my #1 line of defense. If I can show them something out of General Motors OEM documentation or Toyotas or Audis or Volkswagens, that's the best way to do it. Number two is, third-party software for OEM procedures like AllData, CCC's repair methods, Mitchell's Tech Advisor, or OEC's Repair Logic. Paint manufacturers' bulletins. You might have bulletins or documents from paint companies that says you need to extend clear or sand and polish a vehicle. You can have a documentation from companies like 3M or Fuser or Kent. You can have documentation from an equipment manufacturer like your frame machine company or your welder. You might find some information on the internet. Caution, if you're going to use something on the internet to prove your case, make sure it's from a knowledgeable, credible source. You may use a scan tool to prove something's required because it shows that the seatbelt pretensors are collapsed or the live data on a Honda. Or you may just show them the vehicle itself and you show them there's gravel guard on the bottom of the fender or the gaps are misaligned. So there's several ways we can prove that something's required. Is it included? Well, we can use the estimating systems directly to show that something's not included. We have some charts that are called the ASA not included charts. We have my favorite, which is www.degweb.org. We have the SCRS guide to complete repair planning or the bot tool, and our collision advice who pays for what surveys, which I'll show you here in a few moments. Then how do we prove whether there's a predetermined time? We use the estimating systems or degweb.org. And then if there's not a labor time, how do we prove what something is worth? Well, we can do a time study, print an invoice like 3M's repair stack. You might have some mechanical labor times on one of the AllData or something. So again, these are kind of a fact-based approach, and there's factual documentation to back each and every one of these up. Now, so rule number one, remember rule number one, right, is your opinion doesn't mean jack. The only thing that matters is what you can prove, substantiate, or justify. Rule number two, don't take the bait. Rule number three, stick to the facts. Rule number four for negotiations is always close out your request with the insurance company, focusing on the negative consequences of what will occur or happen if they don't allow you to do what you're wanting to do. If I don't do X, then Y will not function properly. Let me give you an example. Let's say for right here that I am taking and removing and replacing a bumper on this Toyota Camry. I would go to the insurance company and say, Mr. or Miss Appraiser, I am removing the bumper. Do you agree with that? Yes. Well, in Toyota, it says that I need to take and I need to do these procedures right here. If I don't do these procedures, then these procedures are not going to work properly or they will not function at all. So therefore, these are the negative consequences, right? So again, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a conversation with the insurance carrier, and I'm going to say, if you don't pay me to do these things, then these will be the negative consequences. And then we're going to have to inform the vehicle owner about it. So what happens is when I tell the insurance carrier, these are the negative consequences. If you don't want to reimburse me for this, then you and I, Mr. and Mrs. Insurance Appraiser, we're going to have a call or a meeting with the vehicle owner and let them know these are the negative consequences. Like, Mrs. Jones, when you come to pick your car up, I just want to let you know your parking cameras are not going to work because the insurance carrier will not allow me under your policy language to do this calibration of your camera when I remove the bumper. So therefore, these are the negative consequences. So I will tell you, focusing on the negative consequences has helped me immensely to get reimbursed from insurance carriers or third-party payers. Remember, these systems will not work if we don't perform these operations. So how would you like us to notify the insurance, the insured or the claimant about these negative consequences? All right, let's continue on. So first question, is it required? So let's go through this real quickly. How can you prove something's required? Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied there. How can we prove something's required? Well, again, OEM repair procedures. Here's a bulletin from Toyota. I can't weld within 18 inches of the electrical component, and I got to disconnect the main SRS computer, right, at the connector. So that I can use OEM repair procedures to prove something's required. Now, I will tell you what I have also found in my career is that a lot of body shop estimators, repair planners, whatever term you want to use, what I have found, ladies and gentlemen, is that they use the insurance company for their lack of knowledge, right, as an excuse for their lack of knowledge. A lot of times body shops will say, well, the insurance company won't pay me for this. But the reality is it's because their lack of knowledge, they're not educated on how to explain it or how to defend their position that something needs to be done. Let me give you a very good example. A lot of times, as I share with you, we do the training for Toyota and Lexus certification for estimatics. Sometimes people will put a calibration for the seat on every single estimate. But if you look at the vehicle on the left, if it's a 2010 Toyota Corolla, I have to do a seat calibration on that if it's an accident no matter what. But if I look over here on the right-hand side, I only have to do a calibration on that Toyota Corolla if I actually remove the seat. So, you know, it's not this one-size-fits-all approach. And a lot of times people are just not educated, you know, especially entry-level estimators, about why a seat may need a calibration based on the weight of the person, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times we're not educated. But at the end of the day, your primary defense, your primary source to educate an insurance company or third-party repair, something's required, is going to be OEM repair procedures, right? Now, what we find in our studies, Collision Advice, we do these surveys every single quarter. So I'm going to go live for just a moment. Let me share my screen for a moment, if I may. So bear with me, please. All right. And Micah, can you confirm for me you can still see my screen, sir?
Yes, you can see it.
So if you go to my website, collisionadvice.com, thank you for that, sir. And you scroll down, you're going to see where it says who pays for what. Our company, Collision Advice, we do surveys every quarter. So every January, April, July, and October, we do surveys. We have over 28,000 people in our database. And we ask them, how often do you get paid for these body operations? How often do you get paid for these mechanical operations or scanning or calibrations or refinish? And then what we do is we release the results. So all you need to do is, if you take our surveys, you just go here and you can download them for free.
Hey, Mike, sorry, it's back to your, it's on your presentation, not your website. Sorry.
All right, let me go back and try to change this again. I'm not sure what happened there. My apologies. All right, can you see my screen now, sir?
There we go. That is the website.
Yeah, so you go right here where it says who pays for what, and then from there you can download the results where it says download prior results, and you can download these just as I'm doing now. And there is no cost to download these. You just select what you want, download for $0, $0, $0, and then you can, don't worry about this subscription to crash, just hit checkout, and then you can hit I agree. And now what you can do is you can download the documents. So for example, when I download this refinish survey that we did, you can see right here. Can you still see the PDF now, Micah?
Yes.
Okay. So if you go right here where it says who pays for what refinish, I'll scroll down here, show you some examples. We put in here, for example, you know, how often do shops get paid to remove static, right? Only 14% of shops said they're currently getting paid to remove static from a component, but that's up 1% from the previous year. And this is what percentage of the time insurance companies say, I always get paid, most of the time, some of the time, or never. We also show you the results by region, and we show you the results by DRP versus non-DRP. So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, you can in our who pays for what surveys, and let me just go back here and reshare the screen. Okay, if you look right here in our who pays for what surveys, one of the things that we see is that 53% of shops said the reason I did not you know, get paid for this operation was because I didn't even think to ask. So if you look at the data here, 53% of shops said, I didn't even think to ask for removing static from the, you know, raw plastic bumper. And 23% thought it was included. So 76% of people that are not getting paid for operations is because they're uneducated. So let's continue on here. And Mike, I just want to confirm that you can still see my screen. It says, is it required paint manufacturers? Can you still see that, sir?
Yeah, is it required paint manufacturer says? Yep.
Thank you so much. So again, we can use the OEM repair procedures to prove something's required to an insurance company. We can use letters or documentation from Axalta, Axo Nobel, BSF, PPG, Sherwin-Williams. You can see here, Axalta says you must extend clear to the natural breaking point, or Axalta says you must denib or finish stain and polish something after it's painted. You can download all of these paint manufacturers' responses from the SRS website. Is a required material manufacturer. You can go to like 3mcollision.com. They have tons of videos here, SOPs that prove things are required, like feather, prime, and block, or denib, or etc., or that cavity wax is needed. Is it required on the internet? Again, I want to say this, right? If you go to the internet, make sure it's from a credible source, right? There's no such thing as a YouTube certified tech, a Facebook certified tech, or Instagram certified tech. So if you're going to go to the internet to get something to prove something's required, please make sure it's from a credible source, right? Like this is a document on a legitimate, credible website that talks about why you can't weld near any electronics because of electromagnetic pulse. This would be a credible source you can use to prove that something was required to remove any electronics near the welding area. So once we proved it's required, now let's go to, is it included? Again, how do we prove something's included? Estimating systems, DEG web, SRS bot tool, collision device toothpaste for what? SRS makes this awesome guide to complete repair planning. It is a free resource. You can download this from the SRS website. Again, it is free. It does not cost you any money at all. Has over 2,000 non-included operations that are grouped by category. And then SCRS took these non-included operations and they actually built them into a software program that's called the BOT tool. BOT stands for Blueprint Optimization Tool. This is a software program. You do have to pay for this. It analyzes your estimate, comes back and says, here's things you left off your estimate. And now it will take it and add it back on your estimate as a computer-generated line, not a manual line. So that way it goes through any scrubs or 11s you would get with Advisor with CCC. Then you have the Database Enhancement Gateway, right? This is a website that is sponsored by a variety of different industry entities. Collision Advice sponsors this, SCRS sponsors it, etc. This website is a free website. It's utilized for 4 things. Number one, if you're writing an estimate and there's a part that's not in an estimating database, but your parts vendor tells you this part exists, you go to the DEG website, you submit a question and say, this part's missing from the database. Danny Gredenberg, he then contacts CCC Mitchell Architects. He gets the part added to the database permanently. Let's say there's a labor time that's missing. You go to select to replace a grill. There's no labor to replace the grill or paint the grill. You submit an inquiry. Danny Gredenberg then submits it to CCC Mitchell Architects, and they come back with a labor time to do that operation. How about if you disagree with the labor time? If your technician says this doesn't pay enough, you can challenge the labor time and get it paid or changed through the insurance companies, through the DEG website. And then you can also use the DEG website to prove to a third-party payer that something's not included. Let me give you an example. This was a fender that was being replaced in a Toyota Tundra. There was 2 parts that actually went to the Toyota Tundra fender. The parts went out of the database. We submitted it, and CCC Motors came back and said, you're right. We left this part out of the database. We're going to go ahead and add it now with this part number, this price, and 1/10 labor. That was permanently added. Let's look right here at Mitchell. This was Mitchell estimating. This quarter panel seal was missing. Submitted it to the DEG website. They came back and said, hey, you're missing this quarter panel seal out of the database from Mitchell. You need to put a note in there. It's one-time use. Mitchell came back and said we made a change. Here's one where a labor time was missing. We were replacing a grill on this vehicle, and we went down to replace this grill. You'll see that there was no labor time for the grill in the database. So we submitted it to CCC Motors. They came back and said, we're now going to give you 3/10 to replace that grill. That's permanently added to the database. Let's look here at Autotex. This was a spoiler on a Toyota and Autotex. There was no paint labor time on the spoiler. It's not going to paint itself. Paint times are based off of square footage or the dimensions. So what we did was we measured the spoiler. We submitted the size and dimensions of it. And Autotex came back and said, we're going to give you 1.2 hours to paint the spoiler. Here's one where we got a labor time change. We were replacing a frame rail section on a vehicle, and it only gave us 3 hours to section the frame rail in. We said that's not enough. We submitted to the CCC Motors through DEG website, and we got the labor time changed from 3 hours to 6 hours to replace and section the frame rail in. Here's one for Autotex. We're replacing a steering gear or rack assembly on a Lexus. Autotex only paid us 2.5 hours mechanical. We said that doesn't pay enough. We sent an explanation of why we thought it wasn't going to pay enough, and Autotex changed the labor time on the steering gear assembly from 2.5 to 8.9, and therefore we got paid more money to do that operation. Here's one where we got a rocker panel paint time change from 0.9 to 1.6. Here's one where the insurance company felt that applying epoxy primer was an included operation. We submitted this, and Autotex came back and said it's not included. So the degweb.org is a free website, again, that helps you to explain or justify or document to a third-party payer that a specific operation is not included, so we can move to the next question, is there a predetermined time? And if not, then our discussion is about what is it worth. A lot of times people will ask me, how much time does it take to get a response back from the DEG website? You can see here's one where we got a response back 0 days, meaning we got an answer back the same day, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day, same day, same day, same day, same day, 1 day. So the response time is pretty quickly. So the first question is it required? Question number 2, is it included? We proved it's not included. So the next question is there a predetermined time in the database? Well, there's lots of ways to prove to an insurance company or a third-party payer that if there is a predetermined time in the database. One of the things I like to say is, if in doubt, click on it, because clicks are free. It does not cost you anything to click on something in the database. So let me show you something right here. You'll see right here where I put down to R&I, the left side impact sensor for the airbag on this Hyundai Elantra, and it gave me 2/10 mechanical labor in order to remove that. So there was a time in the database. But if you ever go to select a part and there is no labor, it shows up like this right here, where the labor is just blank, okay? It doesn't show up with any labor time, and it doesn't say INCL period. That means the computer does not know a time. So if you're ever writing an estimate, you have an R&I or a replacement part, and there's no labor next to it, it does not mean it's included. It means the computer system does not know a time, and you would submit that to the DEG. Remember, clicks are free. I wrote an estimate recently to replace a rear body panel. I had 386 lines on my estimate, 386 lines to replace a rear body panel. Of those 386 lines, 133 of those lines were just R&I operations. 133 of those lines were all R&I operations. They had nothing to do with the replacement. They were just all R&Is, and they were not included. So remember, clicks are free. Now, what is it worth? Well, you can do a time study, print an invoice from something like 3M Repair Stack, your paint material invoicing system, Worth, Kent, whoever it is. There's lots of ways to prove what something is worth. When I had my shops, and at that time I was a member of ASA, the Automotive Service Association, there was a gentleman named Mike West who was from Washington State. At that time, Mike West developed this form you see right here, and it was a time study form for feather, prime, and block. And I would use this time study form, and I would document how much time my painter or refinish technician took to gather tools, equipment, supplies, and feather, edge, prime, and block. One day I had an insurance company come in and say, well, how do I know it really took your person this much time to do this, this, and this? So I said, okay, no problem. The next time you come in, I'll be ready for you. So the next time they came in, ladies and gentlemen, what I did is I had made a video. So I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. But what I did is I hired a professional videographer to come into my shop, and I actually had them film and make a video of my painter masking and, you know, feather edging and priming and mixing up the primer. And I actually had them made a video, and I sat down and I told the insurance appraiser, well, if you want to know how long it took to take my painter to do this, you can sit down here and watch this video, because it took them 4 hours, 32 minutes, 51 seconds, and 3 milliseconds. So again, I made a video and I said, this proves what it is worth. You can also use invoices from companies like 3M's Repair Stack or Worth or Eagle MMS or Mitchell's RMC or, your paint mixing scale. So you can provide invoices. You can always submit an inquiry to the DG website. This was where there was a fender flare that had to be painted on a Toyota, and there was no paint time on it. So we measured it, submitted it. They came back and gave us 1.2 to paint the fender flare. So remember, whenever you come up with a judgment time, your judgment times are based on how long it takes an average technician, which is someone with 5 to 7 years experience, to gather up their tools, equipment, and supplies, and perform the task in a safe and proper manner, and then return your tools, equipment, and supplies back to the proper storage place and clean up your work area, right? So, and this is from a guy by the name of Wayne Krause at Mitchell is the one that told me the times are based off of an average technician, someone with 5 to 7 years experience. So it's not how long does it just take to fix the dent. It's how long does it take for them to gather up all their tools, their equipment, repair the damage, put all their tools and equipment back up, sweep up their stall, throw any trash away. All of that needs to be taken into consideration. Also, I would tell you, never underestimate the power of point one. Let's say that you're asking to get paid for something like battery support. You're wanting to get paid to hook up battery support during the scanning process. Well, you might want 3/10 to hook up battery support, but maybe all they give you after negotiations and a discussion is point one. That's still a victory, because after they get used to seeing that, the point one can go to point two, the point two can go to point three. Now, one of the things we at Collision Advice have done, and I'm going to reshare my screen again, so give me one moment, please. I'm going to share something with you, is we have built a lot of what's called negotiation tools. So Micah, I'm opening up a folder right now, sir. Can you see the folder I am opening up?
Yes, the 2 files from negotiations tools.
Yes. So I am going to give these to Tiffany, and if you email Tiffany, she will share these with you. One of the things we've done at Collision Advice is we have built a series of negotiation tools. We've built over 20 of these that you can utilize that prove the 4 questions. So for example, is it required to extend clear to the natural breaking point? I'm going to go through this rather quickly. Is it required to extend clear to the natural breaking point? Boom, there's a letter from AkzoNobel. Boom, there's a letter from Axalta. There's a letter from BSF. There's a letter from PPG. There's a letter from Sherwin-Williams. There's a letter from Valspar. There's a letter from BMW. There's a letter from Stellantis. There's a letter from Ford. There's a letter from Honda Acura. There's a letter from Hyundai Kia. There's a letter from Mercedes. There's one from Nissan Infiniti and Porsche and Subaru and Toyota and Lexus and Volkswagen and Audi and Volvo and iCar. So I've given you 20 documents that says it's required. Here's a documentation that says Autotech says not included. Here's CCC, not included. Here's Mitchell, not included. I'm going through this rather quickly in the essence of time. Is there a predetermined time? Yes, Autotech, 20% of the base code time. Here's the P pages. Mitchell, 40% of the base code time. There's the P pages. CCC, 50% of the base code time. Here's the P pages. And then we put all of our who pays for what survey results in there. So what we've done at Collision Advice is we have built around 15 negotiation tools. Feather Prime and Block, special use toners, prep raw plastics, R&I electronics, static removal. We have built all of these documents, and when you email Tiffany, she will send those to you so that you in turn, ladies and gentlemen, can actually get paid and have those negotiation tools to present to a third-party payer for your reimbursement. All right, so again, we've got negotiation tools on removing electronics. Now, let's move down to this. One of the things I've observed is that when I go into shops and work with someone side by side, I will actually take and I will, kind of coach them and train them and teach them these negotiation strategies. And then what happens is the estimator that works at the shop, they will go and put all these things on their estimate, R&I electronics, static removal, in-process scans, battery support, seatbelt inspections, etc. And then what they do is they start getting all stressed out when they know they're going to have to talk to the insurance company. So what they do is, let's say, for example, the insurance company came out in person, hypothetically, they just kind of give them the estimate and say, here it is. If you have any questions, let me know. They never have a conversation And then when I asked them, why didn't you talk to the appraiser about it? The number one reason why is usually fear or stress or anxiety, right? They're like, I just feel like this guy or woman's going to just kind of, kirk out on me if I go and ask them for all this stuff. So this anxiety makes us second guess ourselves, which makes us just kind of hand them the paperwork or email it to them without any conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to change your strategy. And I want you to change your strategy that when you present your request to a third-party payer that says, here's all the things I want to be paid for, starting off by having a conversation by telling them your story. And your story is, what has changed in your world recently that is causing you to ask for these things you never asked for before, right? So let's just say, for example, that I'm going to charge for safety inspections to remove the dash and the steering column and measure it on a Subaru, right? Well, instead of me just putting on there to order the steering column and measuring it, or on the dash and inspect the carrier beam, I'm thinking the insurance company's going to think I'm crazy, so I just write on the estimate and I send it to them with no conversation. Well, then the insurance company sees my request and they're feeling anxiety because they think that I am crazy and they don't have a conversation, so they purposely just leave it off the estimate and send the paperwork back to me. Well, that doesn't accomplish anything. Instead, my approach is going to be, I'm going to have a conversation. I'm going to start out by telling the insurance appraiser my story. My story is, I recently took a class. I recently watched a video. I recently read a magazine article. I recently took some training for an OEM manufacturer. But here's what's changed in my world to allow me to acquire this newfound information. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with them how I acquired this information, and I'm going to tell my story. So understand this. Let me kind of recap this. It is natural, 100% natural, for you as an appraiser to have anxiety when you're asking an insurance company to pay you for something you've never asked for before. 100% normal and natural to have anxiety. However, if we just give it to them without any conversation, your chances of getting paid are pretty much down to nil or nothing. So instead, what you need to do is understand that the insurance appraiser is going to be wondering, why now? Why now? What has changed since the last time I talked to Mike? Why is he asking me for this now when he's never asked for this before in the last, 5 years or 5 months or 5 weeks? And that's why, because you know that they're going to be wondering why now, you begin your conversation or your request by telling them your story about what's changed in your world and why this information or these line items are now on your estimate or repair plan. Also, remember, when an insurance company tells you no, that doesn't mean no. It doesn't mean they're never going to pay you. It just means they're not convinced at that point in time to say yes. No doesn't mean no. No means they're not convinced or don't know enough to say yes. It's our job to give them enough to say yes. If you can understand their objections as to why they said no, that is a step closer to getting reimbursed in the future. So remember, when you go to make a request of an insurance appraiser, the first thing they're going to wonder is, why now? Why is Mike asking me for this now when he's never asked for it before? So begin your request by telling your story, how you acquired this new information. Have your documentation prepared in advance. And the documentation means that you have everything to prove that it's required, everything to prove it's not included, everything to prove if there's a predetermined time, and if not, how you justify your value or your worth. I will also tell you that your goal is to present it to an insurance company so matter-of-factly that them saying no is not even an option. I will tell you, if you're going to be emailing an insurance appraiser back and forth, keep your emails as short and sweet as possible. And also, I encourage you to actually take and copy the consumer on any emails that you're going to send as well. The insurance carrier is not going to like that, but it again makes the consumer your ally. Also, remember, if there's something new you're going to ask for, you should practice presenting it or requesting it. And I will tell you, I normally have to practice presenting something at least 4 or 5 times before I feel like I'm confident in my request. You see, when you're dealing with a third-party payer or an insurance company, you have 2 options. You can ask them to pay you, and then they have the option of saying yes or no. or you can tell them with so much confidence and so much certainty that yes is the only response they'll be able to give you. You move from asking them to pay you to telling them with confidence and competence, right? And again, practice at least 4 times making your request before you actually, like role play before you actually have a conversation with an insurance appraiser or third party payer. Now, what happens if you ask for something and they still don't want to pay you? Well, you've got a couple options. Number one is you can perform whatever that specific line operation is or material charge for free. Number 2, you can charge the consumer the difference. Number 3, you can refuse to do the job. In some states, they will have what's called hold harmless agreements, which is an agreement that says you're telling the consumer the insurance company didn't want to pay to measure your steering column. So if you don't pay the difference, you're going to hold me harmless if something ever happens. But whether those are legal or not will vary based by state law. Some shops will use what's called a right to appraisal or RTA clause, where the shop of the consumer's choice gets a mediator. The insurance company gets one. They see if they can work out the differences. If not, it goes to an umpire. It sounds like in your announcements at the beginning of this call, you had David Smith present. He does a lot of RTAs. Also, if it's an agent involved, like a State Farm agent, a nationwide agent, you can get the agent involved. And some agents have the ability and authority to write a check to settle a claim. And I will tell you, there's also a huge benefit in having the vehicle owner come on site and meet with the insurance company. But you always want the consumer to show up in advance so you can prep them and educate them if they're going to be part of the conversation with the insurance agent or the insurance company representative. So remember, if you build negotiation tools with your team, it will increase your chances of getting paid. Also, have a meeting with your staff. Consider taking our Who Pays for What survey results and just pick one item every week and go over it with your team and say, this is something as an organization we're going to start, billing for appropriately. Role play, absolutely role play. If you're going to require your team to stay after hours, give them advance notice. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, the 4 negotiation questions. Is it required? Is it included? Is there predetermined time? If not, what is it worth? So we've covered a lot of information in a short amount of time. I know I was trying to keep this down to, about an hour to 90 minutes. So I wanted to allow some time for some questions. We at Collision Advice actually have a full 1-day class we teach on negotiations. We also base it off of the principles of Chris Voss with Black Swan. He wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. So we do a full day of negotiation class. I tried to just grab like an hour to an hour and 20 minutes worth of data just to share some insights with you. But I'm open to any questions that you may have. So Micah, I'll turn it over for questions if you or anyone has any.
Mike, appreciate the presentation. If nobody else has questions, I have a few things, not necessarily questions, but things that you brought up, Mike, that I'd like to. Anybody have any questions first? So one thing, like you talked about the turning the triangle upside down and educating the customer, and that is, I think it's a tool that we use quite often. Is educating the customer right up front, right when they come in for the estimate, explaining everything to them, the importance of what you're doing, why you're doing it. There's not many shops out there that'll do that. Most of them are going to write an estimate and they've got their triangle upside down, and that customer is going to say they know what they're doing compared to the other shop, because it's all about educating the customer. And we do charge the customer the differences with insurance doesn't pay, but again, it's part of that. It gives us the ability. The reason we have the ability to do that is because we build that upfront with the customer, is why we're doing what we're doing. And it's saying we always let them know some insurance companies won't pay for this and this, but it's required or it's needed because of this reason. Again, that's a great point you made, and I think it's one of the most cheapest and one of the best tools you can use out there. It is free. So
yeah, I am seeing more and more shops that are actually, unfortunately having to charge the customer out of pocket. Especially, and I would say the single biggest friction point with shops and insurers today is going to be their safety inspections. like where Subaru says you need to remove the steering column and all those things in order to inspect them. Also Toyota is the same. They say you got to remove airbags. I was at a shop in Augusta, Georgia recently. Toyota says remove all the airbags and inspect them and all the airbag sensors when the vehicle's in an accident. Remove the airbags, and we found the airbags had not deployed, but were actually separated on the back side. And got the insurance going to pay for them. And we went to just like see if the airbags would deploy during a first responders event, and the airbags actually would not deploy, so they were bad. And that never would have been caught if we had not done the safety inspections and inspected those. I can give you tons of examples. Tim Papp in Illinois, he removed the dash on a GM Silverado and found the dash intrusion carrier, the part that's made of SMC, was actually cracked and busted. So again, it's, I would say that's the single biggest friction point, and unfortunately, a lot of shops are having to charge the consumer the difference on some of those items.
The other thing is, I would encourage anybody out there to take the Who Pays for What. It's great. I've gotten a lot of stuff out of the questions that you ask in those, Mike. It's
Thank
makes
you.
I get come back and going, oh, I didn't know that, or it's something I may have learned a while ago and forgot about it. And we've actually, we've included in some of our charges, some of the things that I have learned from those surveys. So not only do you help the rest of the shops, but you can help yourself by them too.
Thank you. Our Who Pays for What surveys are free. They do not cost anything. I fund those surveys 100% myself, and everybody's names and information is kept. We don't sell our database, so we just keep it internally. I've had people offer to, actually sponsor our surveys, but we just don't take any sponsorship. I pay them all myself, and it's available for free to the industry. It's a great way to have awareness as to what other shops are getting paid for. So I just wish we could get more shops to take the surveys.
It doesn't take long either. It's usually about five, maybe 10 minutes, probably 15, depending on which questions and what the questions are.
Correct. Any feedback for me? Did I miss the mark? Was this helpful? Not helpful? Again, my goal is to give everyone value. I want to make sure I don't waste anybody's time, especially after hours. And any questions, anything that you're having struggles with insurance companies on right now?
I got something. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Mike, Kevin House here from Center Collision. We've met a
Hey,
few
Kevin.
times at Fender Bender
Yes,
and
sir.
stuff.
How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Yeah, I really like how you pointed out about using the owner's manual. You've pointed that out several times, and that's such a valuable resource. And the thing I like about it is that it's something that you're bringing out of the customer's very own vehicle, and so naturally, they're gonna have to accept that that is legit. Whereas you just pull something up off the computer, they're like, well, you might have to have prove, the value of that document. But when you open up their the glove box and pull the owner's manual and show them in their own owner's manual the proper procedures for fixing the car, I just think that's brilliant. That's just something they should, I would say, easily accept as valuable, credible information, and it's just right there in their own vehicle. So yeah, that's
Thank you, sir.
that's a great resource. Also, I totally agree with what you said about spending the time up front instead of getting to the nuts and bolts of like your car needs this, this, and this. Establishing credibility with the customer, that's huge. We do the same thing in our shop. We've we have the same mindset, and it's paid off for us, just establishing the rapport with the customer, so that you know you know they feel like they're you're there to help them rather than just to sell them something. So yeah, you covered a lot of ground tonight. I think And the other thing I appreciate was initially the things you talked about, like, okay, why are all the shops slow right now? Because we can see it's going on everywhere and everybody's feeling it a little bit at least. And I thought that was some really great, valuable information on what's going on nationwide and why it's happening, and quite frankly, what we can do about it. So yeah, thanks. Just great presentation, and I'm glad it was recorded because I'm going to have the rest of my staff watch this tomorrow.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
thank you, Kevin. You're very kind, and I'm very grateful for the comments. It means a lot. Again, I really appreciate that. And yeah, and I will tell you, you know, it's funny because again, I travel all around the country, and I was just at the Midwest Trade Show last week, and again, shops have just really slowed down a lot. And honestly, I'm not a doom and gloom guy, but I believe it's going to probably be that way probably until we get through the fall, right?
Mhm.
Barring if you have a hailstorm or something in your area. Obviously, hailstorms, tornadoes, things like that impact things. But I think we have to really focus on that capture rate, right? Like when you write an estimate, that customer doesn't schedule, like really trying to get somebody to follow up with them the next day. And also upselling, which, I know many of us when we first got in the industry, we used to upsell all the time. And then you just get to where you get kind of complacent on that. And we kind of look at upselling as a pain in the butt. But I think we've got to get back to some of those basics. But Kevin, mad respect for you, buddy. And I'm just thanks for the kind words, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I like the point that you made about just keeping it to the facts, because once emotions get involved or you try to start fighting a moral battle, like you said, it's not really something that you're gonna win. You just keep it just straight to the facts. That's what it is.
No, I appreciate that. And again, and I acknowledge that people get emotional, like somebody's having a bad day or something, or their kids are sick or failing at school, or they're not doing well in their marriage, or I don't know, you just never know what somebody has going on, right? So, I acknowledge that emotions play a factor in the negotiations, but I'm also trying to disarm the emotions by kind of keeping a factual conversation. So if you ever, anybody on this call, and I appreciate whoever made that comment, thank you for your comments, but if there's ever something where you just like can't find the documentation to justify something, please feel free to reach out to me or a member of my team. We live in the OEM repair procedures all the time. So, if you can't find something, we certainly can be a resource for you.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to announce myself. Jared Austin with Center Collision.
Jared, thank you so much, sir, for your kind words.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad that I joined the Zoom meeting. So very educational.
Thank you.
Anybody else have
Anyone
any
else?
questions? Yeah, Mike, it was an awesome presentation. I do thank you for your time and like I said, all the information
Thank
you
you,
did
sir.
share with us. So that was great. I said I was looking forward to this, and you didn't disappoint. So
Oh, you're very kind, sir. Thank you. And again, if my team or I can do anything at all, let me know. Danny Gredenberg, who oversees the DG, he also works for us full time. He does that part time. He has a great presentation he does on utilizing the owner's manual to gain the customer's trust and showing people like some nuggets in the owner's manual. So if there's something we can ever help you with on that, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to help in any way.
So one other thing, Michael, I was going to mention because we have a full service mechanical shop as well as the collision shop, but we actually purchased a Autel scan tool, just a kind of a basic one that would pull all the modules and stuff. And we haven't used it yet, but we just got it. We're gonna end up uh, scanning a car when we go out to write an estimate right up front, so we can say, hey, there's a code in your airbag, there's a code in here, and these are things that we need to address when you're working on it. That's something I thought it would show that you care about the customer, you have their best interest in mind, and you're bringing these problems that accident may have caused right up to the forefront, right up front, versus and they're going to be asking their insurance, why aren't you, what about this, what about that? And so that's something thought it was thought we'd try doing and see where that ends up.
Oh, yeah. And when it comes to scanning, a lot of times people will tell me, well, Mike, I can only get the insurance company to pay me so much for scanning. It's really important you understand all the steps to scanning, like hooking up battery support. And, battery support needs to be hooked up, for a minimum of 10 minutes. If you're doing like a Honda or an Acura, you got to check the live data. If you're doing other Asian vehicles, Toyotas, Nissans, etc., Mazdas, Kias, Hyundais, you got to verify the X and Y values of the ADAS components as well as the steering angle sensors. If there's all these different steps that you have to do. In my mind, the diagnostics, which is the research, the DTCs, also is a not included operation, because how long it takes to research one DTC is different than how long it takes 10 DTCs. So again, there's lots of not included operations that you can think about when it comes to scanning. So again, it's just being privy to that. Another thing I would say also is keep your mind cognizant of if the vehicle's connected through telematics or not. I had a Nissan in Nebraska. The shop was replacing a quarter panel. They disconnected the battery, disassembled the vehicle. When they connected the battery, the police showed up. That happened like 4 times. And what it was the XM Sirius radio was tied into the urethane on the back glass. So every time they disconnected and reconnected the battery, even if the vehicle for Nissan Service Connect was placed in service mode, the XM Sirius radio was notifying the police because they thought the window was broken. The police are obligated to show up. So using OEM scan tools or even the OEM software is becoming more and more important just to identify those things like telematics. So just some feedback for you on that as well.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any questions or input? All right. So a couple things. Again, Mike, thank you for your time. Like I said, I appreciate that. A couple of last things I wanted to bring up. We have our Northwest Auto Care members only Facebook group. So like I said, members of the Northwest Auto Care are encouraged to join that. There's a lot of good information. I do post a lot of some of the surveys, Michael, you put out. I will once in a while I'll put those on there just to helps educate shops and listen to training, are great articles. So if you're not a member and you're please you can join. Just request to join on that. One other thing I wanted to ask real quick before we close the meeting is what other subjects are our members looking for a presentation. So if anybody has any input, I'd love to hear some ideas on our presentation for the coming meetings.
Well, with the kind of generally across the board, the industry is kind of slow. I think we should consider something along the lines of successful marketing tactics. And obviously, Mike talked about all the doing the basics, which, if you're not doing that, you got to start at the basics. But beyond that, maybe what people are doing. We've done some things recently. We're experimenting with some new things. But I think everybody, if they're not feeling it yet, they're going to be feeling it sometime throughout the year that, the business isn't as steady or the growth isn't happening that they were hoping for. So what can we do about it? So that's what I think would be a really valuable thing is just marketing strategies.
Okay. I've got that written down. So anybody else have any input on that? They'd like to a presentation or some other areas of information in the collision industry they'd like to know. I was thinking artificial intelligence. There's quite a bit going on with that in this industry too.
I think that would be an interesting topic as far as the AI estimatics that we're starting to see. Maybe
Okay.
just some background on how that's working, I guess, and what effects it's having on the shops.
What was the question again, sir?
We're looking for subjects for, upcoming meetings that the members were interested in, seeing.
I
Yeah,
would tell you,
and
if I may suggest to you, Steve Dawson from Hunter Alignment, he just did, I do what's called Spartan 20 groups, and he just did a session for us on not included operations for suspension alignments, and it was a really, really, really good presentation. I would highly recommend that. Also, DECRA, they could do a presentation for you guys on ESG, which is environmental societal governance. Also, have you had Aaron Schulenberg from SCRS do a webinar for your members on the blend study so they understand how to bill appropriately for that? So I don't know if any of those ideas, are of interest to you or not.
Okay, who is that, Michael, at SCRS?
Aaron Schulenberg.
I think I talked to him the other day, so
I'll do a text introduction for you if you'd like.
sure. If nothing else, like I said, great connection to have as well, so.
yeah, I agree. The blend study one would be a really good one to understand, so that you could have more information to explain that properly. Because there's quite a bit of pushback on that from what I'm noticing from the insurance carriers.
Pete,
They acknowledge that it is something that's there, but they aren't acknowledging that the time needs to be changed.
All right. Well, if anybody, like I said, if anybody down the road has an input, let me know. Like I said, they're more than willing to, we'll get some meetings set up on that. So I want to thank everybody for your time. Again, it was great. We'll meet after the summer, and like I said, if you can make it to the summer retreat, it's somewhat in our backyard. So uh, it's just in Suquamish. I'll probably be staying at home and come in for the day. So. But again, I appreciate everybody's time. Mike, thank you for, like I said, this presentation. I appreciate it. And like I said, reach out to Tiffany if Driggers for if you want this presentation as far as the PowerPoint. So, and then Brenda, you have it recorded for us as well. So, all right, with that, I think we're going to call it an evening.
how can we get a hold of that recording, Micah?
Brenda, are you going to be able to? Can you share it, or how do we?